Hi, everyone, and welcome to Metaphysical. Have you ever heard of someone just going about their business when they find themselves in another time or see people and events around them that don't make any sense? No, we're not talking about time travel today, but the craziest stories and phenomena about time slips that we found. From the Bermuda Triangle to the mysterious Flight 727, from MRIs to the butterfly effect, there is a lot of weird stuff we found. So join remote viewer John Vivanco and me, investigative researcher Rob Counts, for a show that's out of this world.
And I got to add, are you listening to the Metaphysical podcast or watching us on a video platform? Please leave us a 5-star rating and review to help us reach even more people. And make sure you like and subscribe wherever you're watching us.
John.
Yeah.
How you doing, buddy?
Good.
Good. I'm excited for this episode. It's going to be a good one.
It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it's it's weird, and I think there's a lot of fake stories about the phenomena out there.
There are. Yeah.
There's a lot of fake stories, a lot of people making stuff up, but then there's some things, some events that have occurred that are just completely unexplainable to all that are involved, and a lot of weird parallels between experiences that do seem legit that I noticed.
Yeah, it's like we've remote viewed some cases that just turn out to be like false, just somebody making a story up. And I think it follows this whole creepypasta side. It's not a creepypasta necessarily, but it's just fiction.
Right.
And the internet has bred that en masse. And, it's turned into people even making TikTok and Instagram videos of their events or claiming that they have some proof and they put it on TikTok and stuff like that. And, we've remote viewed a couple of these things and absolutely not true, just not true. I mean, one guy in Sweden, for instance, who the story was everywhere. He came home from work, saw his kitchen sink was leaking underneath, and he goes inside, he crawls inside, and he ends up like, I don't know, in a future IKEA or something like that. It was just, no, he didn't end up in a future IKEA.
That's great. That I wish that was true, just because he's Swedish.
Exactly. No, he supposedly ends up in the future with his future self, and he takes a selfie of him and his future self, and they both have the same tattoo.
And it's an IKEA tattoo.
It's an IKEA tattoo.
Because they're Swedish, so it has to be.
So, we looked at that one, for instance. Somebody making a story up. So it's hard to decide what to remote view on some of these things, right? Yeah.
I think the more viral ones are the ones that I'm usually like side-eyeing. Like there was a guy in Alaska who I found, it was Alaska or one of these northern areas, who was basically claiming that he is a fisherman that goes out to sea and hears sirens on the ocean all the time, like and he's filmed it.
I saw that one.
Yeah, and on like I watched a bunch of the guy's stuff and I was like, been right. I don't believe it. I don't believe.
No.
And the weird thing is, like, I believe that stuff's possible. I just don't believe him.
Yes. That was another one that we viewed. It was like super quick, like and I can't really necessarily take one session from a remote viewer seriously because we line it up between viewers. But I put one session on it just to see, and it was nothing. There was nothing. It just seemed like nothing was going on. So I'm not even going to deal with this. It's just a waste of time because I didn't even think that the data even related. So I didn't think that was true.
That's all over TikTok,
Yeah,
it is. Yeah. But some of the strange things that are common time slip phenomena are things like coldness, almost this like flatness, like this weird pressure that all of a sudden enters a situation. Your heart feels heavy. It feels heavy. There's this weird depression, these just strange physical effects. And then the most common I found was weather-related phenomena with this issue. And the strange thing is, and I would be curious to see how all of this other stuff holds up to certain scientific tests related to electromagnetics. But one thing I found that was really interesting was, or that it reminded me of, I guess you could say, is the butterfly effect, that movie. Because the butterfly effect is all about this person goes into an MRI. Now, in the MRI, an MRI is different from a CAT scan for those of you at home. CAT scans are all X-ray images. MRIs are imagery taken from electromagnetics. And there's a big spinning mechanism that actually ends up shooting the electromagnetics or creating the field that's somehow then creating the images. And like this one spin I heard is like almost a terabyte of information. Like there's a lot of information that comes out of an MRI. And this idea that someone can enter an MRI and come out in an alternate universe is bizarre, just because it's electromagnetics that are being used for the technology in the first place. So it's actually going on, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, and then you have Hot Tubs, right? Hot Tub Time Machine.
Where great movie.
A little bit of Red Bull in the control panel, and
I mean, that's where I do most of my time travel.
Exactly. But I think that the idea of a MRI being a cause of time slips or time travel is really fascinating because of that electromagnetic component. It's like when you get to anything around time travel and remote view it, I mean, that's really one of the main components is some type of megahertz frequency of electromagnetics hitting each other. So,
well, and you guys, we'll be getting more into the strange kind of reality of this in the next episode, where we'll dig into more of the remote viewing that John and his team have done around this. But yeah, I think this weather phenomena is really bizarre. Most of the strange phenomena I've seen in the ocean usually comes around crazy weather. And I mean, and we're not just talking about people dying here. I mean, I'm talking about strange things that happen on the ocean usually are accompanied with weather, whether it be UFO sightings and or strange things happening on ships, where ships are experiencing more supernormal phenomena, And
well,
have you found this? You found this too, right?
Yeah, check this out. So at my house, I had this area that was like this closed-in square area. One side was open, and there was a door that just went out. It was like a tiny little patio area on a part of the house. And I noticed that leaves would swirl in the middle of the area because of the way the wind pattern would go. So that was really interesting. So I grabbed a DC, like one of these things, like a tri-field DC meter, right? I grabbed one of these things and I stuck it in the middle where the vortex of wind normally forms, and the thing was going off with energy. Like literally, it was electromagnetic. It was electromagnetic energy that was being created within the vortex. It's creating probably a static type of electricity. So you think about storms, you think about low pressure systems, which are huge vortexes, or hurricanes, cyclones even. I mean, they're huge vortexes. And they're going to create probably energy on electromagnetic spectrum, just like I found with the vortex happening at my house. So I think that is something. It absolutely is something.
But do you know what's so crazy about what you just said?
No.
Is that, sometimes I feel like some of these ideas that we see in movies are not just ideas. There's right. Something more to it, right? And when we think about when this technology was being developed, we're talking about the early 1900s, when people were realizing what electromagnetics could do, right? Tesla, Einstein. Then you have, what was it, the 1940s or 1950s, The Wizard of Oz comes out. And The Wizard of Oz, the whole premise of The Wizard of Oz is that Dorothy gets sucked into a tornado, enters literally another dimension,
right? Which
I would never want to be in. I mean, those munchkins.
Those munchkins.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, really though, that whole thing, that's just bizarre. And then, you're you put the DC meter in the center of the wind and you were finding that the electromagnetics in the center of that, even in that small little thing, like imagine what's going on in a tornado.
Exactly.
That massive force, like could the center of the tornado actually be like do more than what we're aware of?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's entirely plausible. And then you have the whole idea of water. Well, water being a record. So when you get to storms, water potentially holding a record of things that have happened, you know? And then also the whole idea that radio waves are electromagnetic, and electromagnetic frequencies can also carry information. Like, you know, what if they can carry information from the past as well, you know? You get this whole water and electromagnetic spectrum interacting with each other. I mean, what's that going to do, right?
Yeah, you're kind of blowing my mind right now because
Yeah,
because if you think about it, like our bodies are composed of what, like 80% water, something like that, more
70 to 80, I think.
70 to 80% water, and that water, like actually, water is evidence that everything is connected right there. Because if water is containing memory,
Right.
and we all have, like, all water is almost like one thing if you think about it. How could it avoid being one thing? Even if you're taking it out of the air, like our entire environment around us is a gigantic, massive hard drive of memory.
Right. Right.
That's a really crazy idea, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
And then us being, entirely a part of that, and then adding in, the electromagnetic it just seems to be behind what I found. Like, look, what were they doing? What were they actually experimenting on with the high frequency stuff at the Montauk Project? Because it was a mixed bag of high frequency and electromagnetics, you know. And
yeah, I mean, one of the primary things that we saw was that there it was like, and this is obviously going to be super duper simplistic, because sometimes remote viewing is just like an infographic type thing. You know, it's just super basic concepts, where there was two frequencies being pulsed towards each other, and when they hit each other, they created a new frequency, and that frequency created the doorway. So they were using two different types of energies to pulse towards each other that would interact and do something when they came together, when that just created this opening.
I guarantee that those were opposite energies that they were throwing.
Right.
I mean, think about yin and yang, right? Like if they're throwing two frequencies together that are opposite charges, what happens in the center and the new frequency that it creates would be the doorway. That makes
would be the doorway.
Theoretical sense. I mean,
right. And so it was like once they did that, it created this doorway to, it was like a bridge between, our dimension and another dimension, right? So that it's like, it wasn't necessarily like 100% another dimension. Yeah, but it was like the waiting room in a sense, and it was all dark in there, right? Interesting. And then when it appeared to be when they shifted frequency a little bit, they added a new frequency to this whole thing to shift that center frequency a bit, is when it would shift more into another dimension. So it's like you get into string theory and all this stuff, and physics. In the remote viewing data, it comes up quite a bit, but I don't 100% know what it means. All I know is this sort of like high conceptual framework for what they were doing. So when they added another frequency to it is when it began to shift that doorway into just another dimension or another realm entirely, as opposed to like a waiting room.
You know, this is my thoughts on this entire thing. Is after all of the research I've been doing, trying to get into figuring out what these projects historically have all been about, I think that, of course, the theory of relativity is a thing. Einstein's theory of relativity is a thing that they use in physics. But I think it's a complete distraction from what they're actually using to create the similar effects that the Einstein-Rosen bridge theorized, which is, I think it's so simple actually that you can use electromagnetics for that. And if everybody knew that, I mean, think about how much that would change if people knew
Yeah,
that.
that's my feeling on this as well. It's my feeling on it as well. I don't know how or why, but I've often felt the same way. It seems actually really simple for some reason. I mean, heck, it's like in some of the data that we've seen on portals, it's literally just a person making the correct tones, whether they're using it
with your human voice,
with their human voice or an instrument or something, but their human voice making the correct tones that will create some disturbance within a piezoelectric wall or whatever that opens up a portal to somewhere else. I don't know. I don't know how it works. I have no idea how it works. It's like magic. You know, it's like this with remote viewing. You can remote view this stuff. You can get like these a conceptual framework, a conceptual idea of what it is about, what it does. But to explain how it got to that point is it's beyond me, and probably beyond most physicists.
So Lindsay actually has a theory on this as well. And Lindsay actually, it would be really helpful for you to explain what your theory is, but then also give people a little bit more information about your background, because you studied this stuff in school, didn't you?
I did, and I'll say I'm not a physicist, so this is just my theory. But I did study some physics. I have a minimal background. So my theory here is that if one reality is, or one universe or one type of existence is vibrating or existing at one frequency, and either on purpose or accidentally, that existence bumps into another reality that's vibrating or existing at another frequency, then the waves of those frequencies will interact with each other via wave interference. That's what we were showing here. So that's how a door could theoretically open, because you see the flat area. I know this is just a simple visual representation, but theoretically, my guess is that you could somehow figure out how to open a door at the point where these two waves meet.
Which would be this theoretical Einstein-Rosen bridge, even though the way they described it was by generating heavy masses on either side of those. But if you think about it, we're not sure. Could electromagnetics do that? Maybe they can. And it's like it's like maybe there's more than one way to skin a cat, is what I'm trying to say.
There is. And man, this just gets really funky, because I mean, even when you get into the idea of the Mandela effect, which a lot of it is just a bunch of nonsense in general.
Yeah.
Just people making stuff up and seeing what
I remember it this way. Yeah, I know
exactly what sticks. Some of this stuff is a phenomena. Some of it is a phenomena.
Yeah.
And when we remote viewed, what was going on, it was like it related to parallel universe theory. It related to multiverse theory. It related to inflation theory, like the Big Bang inflation theory, and everything that physicists have come up with surrounding that in order to explain aspects of the theory of relativity, right? So I mean, even with the Mandela effect, in some cases, there is it goes into parallel universe theory. The data specifically does, where quantum options occur if you take a different path than you normally take, right? So you get these quantum options that are occurring, and then there is a whole other universe where that quantum option plays itself out, right? And so what we've seen in remote viewing is that these things seem to like go back and forth. They go back and forth over each other.
I think we just coined a new term called quamptions.
Quamptions.
Quantum options.
Quantum options.
Quamptions.
So it's like they come together, they move together, and they come apart. And I mean, that's what the data was saying. It's like I'm just the middleman here at the moment.
Yeah.
Like that's what the data was saying. It was literally talking about parallel universes that are so close to each other that they flip back and forth. Literally, they'll flip back and forth. I mean,
maybe that's needed in order to keep the universe stable. Maybe the multiverse is needed in order for stability in the first place. You know?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Or it could be like this, like if there's a big bang, bang and it goes out, it's like a pendulum. Is everything going to come back to become one again? And that means all multiverses, all different aspects of self that we have through all these quantum options throughout all parallel universes are going to come back into one, you know, like a pendulum. When it goes one way, it has to go the other, because the Big Bang would be, in a sense, the creation of duality, right? And as duality goes forth, is it going to swing back into oneness? You know, and would that encompass the whole multiverse, the whole of the parallel universes?
Well, and you know what's weird too is I think physics, it stays very safe with how they describe, like our physicists stay very safe with how they describe all of this, even when they're getting into talking about quantum things or the multiverse. I saw some articles talking about how the multiverse is, to them, is the fact that space is infinitely expansive. There was a big bang that occurred over here, but because it's so infinitely expansive, another big bang could have occurred somewhere else, and they're both growing.
Right.
You know, right. Kind of like what Lindsay is showing up on screen right now, which is a bunch of bubble universes.
Well, that's part of inflation. That's part of inflation theory.
Right.
Yeah. After the Big Bang, after the Big Bang came out, it just moved at an exponential rate. All matter moved at an exponential rate. And then when it slowed down, another Big Bang was created.
I was going to say a cycle, right?
Yeah.
Like a cycle. Yeah. And then another one occurs or something.
Right. So that's the idea behind it.
Oh, man.
I don't know. But I mean,
there's so many things we could get into here.
But when you get the whole time slip thing, it's like what people are experiencing with these, what aspect is it? Because some of these could be astral, some of these could be hallucinations, some of these could be truly an electromagnetic phenomena, some of these could be just psychic perception taking over all senses in some area, overwhelmed on the psychic senses, because there's a record of whatever happened there in the past existing in an energetic realm, like an Akashic record in a sense. And so, you know, I think the most interesting ones are where you have a lot of reports of this type of phenomena in a specific area, rather than the one-offs, right? Yeah. Rather, I mean, the stories are cool. Like some of the stories that people have are really cool about their time slip experience, but I don't know. I'm not going to spend time remote viewing that to try to figure it out.
Yeah. And gosh, you know, we're gonna, for everybody at home right now, we're gonna be getting into a few of these stories soon. We're just kind of talking about the overall effect right now. But I did want to say one thing before we shared some of those stories, which is, you know how sometimes in mathematics or in physics, even, in order to understand something, you almost create a variable that doesn't exist to try to theorize how something is occurring, right? If multiple dimensions exist, and in every single dimension there is a different time space, time slips can automatically make more sense, because if there is a slight merge of these two dimensions for even a few moments, and you enter another time space's dimensional field, and then you move back into your current time space, what happened? And actually, some of these stories are exactly that we're going to be getting into.
Right.
Where there is just missing time. How did I get here at this time when all of my personal evidence is telling me it should have taken longer, or there's even vaster periods of time in between those two, right? Now,
the whole missing time thing. Yeah.
And, you know, what you were just saying as well about specific places, I found the same thing in my research, is that we find these time slips. I've found these time slips happen they're more likely to happen in specific areas than they are randomly. And where are those areas? Well, one of the biggest areas that I found this type of phenomena is the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of haters out there think the Bermuda Triangle, there's nothing serious about the Bermuda Triangle, but we have centuries of evidence of weird stuff happening in the Bermuda Triangle. I mean, Christopher Columbus, the first dude on record to come across this area, noted the strangeness of the Bermuda Triangle as he was, sailing through it. There was some type of activity similar to a meteor that came down, and then I think it was days later or soon after, he saw a very strange light on the horizon in that area, documented the entire thing, didn't understand it. And there you go. The first dude, in our history, at least, the Western civilization, was the first guy that got there. I mean, that's strange.
Well, it's like, okay, so, well, I mean, this is in the ocean. Ocean floor, like, where's this phenomena coming from in general? Like, where is the point of the phenomena in general? On land, it's like, the Hessdalen Lights, for instance, in Norway, where there's a lot of phenomena, and it's been heavily studied, scientifically studied, with a lot of different instrumentation to try to understand the phenomena. And in part, I don't think this is all of it, but in part, it has to do with the ground, the way the ground is layered from water to silt to granite, and the way the water flows, it creates a giant capacitor, creates a giant battery in a sense. And so there's electrical charges zipping through the atmosphere. And I don't think that's all of it. But there is that aspect, right? There's this aspect of natural combination of earth type things that create a phenomena. And this is also why you find these around mountains, volcanoes, areas where you have big rivers and a lot of granite. You're prone to find more reports of UFOs and paranormal type activity in general. You have an electromagnetic thing going on.
Why is it that whenever a volcano erupts, there are the craziest electromagnetic lightning storms that happen above the eruption?
Oh yeah, I mean that's part of the eruption process. When you get to these types of locations where you have like a confluence of earth energies, you find paranormal weird things happening, portals, electrical phenomena happening in the sky and around the area. And I've never actually looked at magnetic anomalies around the Bermuda Triangle, which would be the interesting thing to look at. I've looked at magnetic anomalies in locations on land, and one of the things that you do find is that where you have a huge increase of magnetism next to a complete dropout of magnetism in magnetic anomaly maps, you can often find, not always, but often find more reports of paranormal phenomena in the zone in between those areas, if they're close enough to each other. So that's always an interesting resource to look at when you find or when you hear of locations that have a lot of strange happenings, whether they're time slips or UFOs, portals, and whatnot.
This gets, what I'm about to say gets a little bit more into the, what if category, I guess you could say. But there have been reports, allegedly, of there being a pyramid. Like there was an ancient civilization. There was some type of architectural structures beneath the ocean off the coast of Miami, which, okay, so a few things that's kind of interesting is like, why is it called the Atlantic Ocean? Atlantic Ocean. Why did it get called that?
Atlantic.
Right.
Well, okay, so if you go back 12,000, 11,000 to like 13,000 years ago on Earth, you can look at hard data, hard science, where the ocean levels were 400 feet lower than they are currently. And during the Younger Dryas period from like 11,000 to 13,000 years ago, there was within a couple of year time frame, huge temperature spike up, and then back down into an ice age, and then back up. So some great cataclysm happened at that time to melt the ice basically that covered all of Canada, right? Covered all of Canada. And then that ice unlocked, turned into water, and literally rose the oceans 400 feet. So think about all of the land that we had.
Yeah, much more.
Yeah,
much more.
So I would not be surprised for a second that there would be structures there.
Well, and you know, what was the last episode that you and I shot at least a couple episodes ago was the Chinese pyramids, right? And we were talking about the technological uses for a pyramid, even aside from just energy creation, which if pyramids were used for that, and there is a pyramid below the ocean, we don't know what that would do on the sea, like with that force kind of coming up and what it could create, even shooting up with electromagnetics. I mean, there's a lot we don't know here.
Right. There's a lot we don't know. Yeah.
So you want me to tell you this crazy story?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you heard of Bruce Gernon?
No.
Okay. So Bruce Gernon, he is a pilot, and I believe he was taking trips from the Bahamas to Miami quite often. And on December 4th in 1970, he had to take a trip. I believe it was from the Bahamas to Miami. And that flight usually takes about 1.5 hours approximately, right? Especially with the type of small plane that he was in. I think that plane could only go maximum of 187 miles per hour or something, some of the 180 miles per hour, some of the data that I saw, right? So he basically gets into the air. He gets to about, I think it was 1,000 feet, and he sees this black cloud in the sky. And, he's an experienced pilot. He kind of goes through the cloud. It's not a big deal. He gets through, right? He gets up to 11,000, I think it was 11,500 feet. And he sees a massive black cloud that he can't even avoid. And he gets into the cloud and he starts getting nervous because there's no rain. There's no rain in the cloud. He's kind of never really seen anything like this. But he was just all right, well, I got to get out of this. So he's trying to fly through this strange cloud. And now there is what seems like he's in the center of a vortex, kind of like what you were describing almost, right? So it's not like he's in clouds and can't see anything. He's inside clouds. He can see them around him, but he's flying through them. And eventually, after about a half hour of flying, he sees the light at the end of the tunnel. He gets himself through and right away gets onto the radio, because while he was in that, nothing was working. His compasses were getting weird. His radio was not working. He could not mayday anyone. It was like him just kind of well, let's just see this through. Let's get out of here. He gets out, he gets on the radio, and he finds himself right over the Miami airport where he needs to land, basically. And I think he basically, of course, he was baffled, right? Especially because all of the navigational instruments were not working while he was in there. He finds out that I think basically he had cut the trip in that is supposed to take an hour and a half into 45 minutes. He cut it in half. He lands in Miami. They're telling him it's a specific time, but somehow he got there way faster than he was supposed to get there.
Right. There's another story too. Isn't there another one of a military guy landing there? He ran into the same type of phenomena, a black cloud. I mean, that's pretty common in these stories. There's a black cloud, right?
Yeah.
But I think there was one where this military guy landed, but he landed somewhere around Miami or Key West, or not Key West,
I don't
but
think I've heard this one.
Palm Beach or whatever. And it was the airbase. It was the same airbase, but it was from like 20 years ago, 30 years ago or something.
No, I think you're talking about Sir. You might be talking about Sir something Goddard, Sir Robert Victor Goddard.
Okay. Yeah.
Although this could be another similar story, because you're talking about Miami and that was in the UK. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, but what is it? Yeah, this was so anyway, what's weird is to this day no one can really figure out what happened. His fuel, he checked his fuel. He had only burned off the half hour or 45 minutes he was in the plane. No one could find any reason why he should have arrived at Miami faster, and yet he did. And what's weird is there was another instance of a plane, I believe it was flight 727.
Right.
It disappeared above the runway, like as it was landing, disappears into thin air. No one can find the plane. Emergency crews come out. They're trying to figure out what happened. All of a sudden, the airplane reappears and lands. And what's weird is, to everyone on the airplane, all of a sudden officials started showing up. They tried to quiet the entire thing down, right? But everyone on the plane said for them, there was no time slip. It was just like them landing. And when, like, all of a sudden they look out the window and there's all these emergency crews, and then they land and they're like, how did that happen? You guys just appeared out of nowhere, right? All in this one area where the Bermuda Triangle basically meets the Miami area.
Right. Yeah, I remember that story. It's funny with these stories too, because, okay, it's like in remote viewing, when we look at these things, it literally is like descriptions of a portal, right? A portal. It's that ubiquitous portal again that's responsible for all these
that we can't figure out.
That we can't figure out, but we know the components of the portal, as far as the physical components of the portal. But how does it actually work? How does it actually form? And why does it form when it forms? There are so many things that I personally don't know about these things, even though I've got the tool of remote viewing behind me.
Yeah.
That is so difficult to figure out and becomes so nebulous when we task on it, because the data, like, you have to think, like, a remote viewer, when they view something, they have to use conceptual language for things that they don't necessarily understand.
Yeah.
Or, it's because, and they don't know what they're remote viewing, but if they don't understand advanced physics, or even stuff that physics hasn't even explained, can't explain or figure out,
or won't,
they don't have the language for it. They don't have the language for it. A remote viewer just doesn't have the language for it, and they wouldn't be able to detail it out in a way that you could understand. So there's something going on with these things that I can say and look at I can explain from a very highly conceptual framework. But when you get into the nitty-gritty, what's going on here? What's going on? And I think there's a lot of different things. I think that you have a confluence of different types of energies, along with even like specific times of the year, perhaps even astrological influences or influences from the sun during solar storms, where things just line up perfectly on an energetic level, and then boom, something weird happens. And they're not something that, it isn't like it just exists in one static place, in one static state all the time. They come and go. They move 100 miles away. They move close to where you saw them in the past or experienced them in the past. So it's like when you get to the Earth-based time slip portal locations, time slips. I don't think time slips are any different than portals. I just think they're these sort of like moving forms in a sense, where they'll appear and disappear based off of different conditions, and they'll move around in areas as well. But, you know, my thing has always been to try and figure out how to predict, you know, when and where these places would open.
Yeah, so that you and I can go on an expedition through one.
Right. Yeah. You know, and it's like, it's interesting too, because then you have all these ideas and concepts around CERN and them opening up portals so they can escape, go to another world, you know, and man, you know, if this stuff fascinates us and the general public, you guaranteed this is fascinating scientists. How would you do this? How would you keep it? How would you create a static portal? You know, where it just exists there. You could turn it on and turn it off, turn it on, go through it, and then come back, whatever. I mean, I don't know. It's just.
Yeah, this just looks like a gigantic MRI machine. Look at it.
Right.
It's like, of course, it's not exactly that, because you're dealing with particles. It's a little different.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're using some of the, look, there's the MRI machine.
There's the MRI.
And this is what happens when it starts spinning. It starts off kind of slow, and then it ramps up. And you know what's weird about
magnets, huh?
Yeah, what's weird about an MRI machine really is no one really understands how it makes images, because you're talking about it throwing an electromagnetic field or creating one, and then images are coming back.
I wonder if there's like stories, like maybe on some, I don't know, hidden forum of like MRI lab workers talking about like what happened when they did certain things to the MRI machine, or like I entered a time slip while I was working in an MRI lab.
I entered the MRI machine and I ended up on the set of The Butterfly Effect.
Right, exactly. Like, what if there's this whole like underground world of MRI technicians, like going on, you know, time slip journeys, time travel journeys with these machines? That would be hilarious.
Well, this is interesting.
Like on pole or something.
So Lindsay just pulled this up. It's how does MRI work? So MRIs employ powerful magnets, which produce a strong magnetic field that forces protons in the body to align with that field. When a radio frequency current is then pulsed through the patient, the protons are stimulated and spin out of equilibrium, straining against the pull of the magnetic field. Interesting. Who the heck figured this out?
I know.
Goodness gracious. Well, you know, everybody at home, hope you enjoyed this episode and this conversation we had going on. Our next episode, we're going to get into a bunch of strange stories that we found in Britain. Britain seems to be, for some reason, a place where a lot of this stuff happens. And we're going to get into John's remote viewing a little bit more on all of this and kind of get into the nitty gritty on that. We've got a few extra stories over there as well. So hope you enjoyed this episode. I certainly did. And yeah, John, what do you think here?
Hot tub time machine. Let's go.
All right. Well, stick around, you guys. Thanks for being with us. If you have not done so yet, please like and subscribe. And if you're on podcasts, please give us a rating and review if you could take the time to do that so we can reach more people, especially if you like what we're doing. And yeah, also we're pumping out clips every day on Instagram or TikTok if you're over there. And yeah, we're going to keep pumping these out and hope you guys enjoy the conversation as much as we do. And yeah, John, thanks for being with me. It's always good. And we'll see you guys next time.